Okay. So in the previous class, we had looked about this layers of abstraction, and then a simplified design flow, a simplified VLSI design flow, and then we had seen this pie chart. Okay, and the three domains that it represents: structural, behavioral, geometrical domain. Okay, and then we had seen one example of design hierarchy, at what is design hierarchy, and how it is applied to decompose a complex design into simpler ones, and then uh, to make the system, to design a big system. Okay, and so basically a 4-bit adder can be decomposed into carry and sum blocks, and we know how to design carry and sum blocks. So we start from here, and then we combine them properly to get the complete 4-bit adder circuit. Okay, then this was the structural decomposition. Okay, and then this is the this was the geometrical decomposition. Okay, so the representation in terms of geometry or area. Okay, and then this was the actual layout. Okay, that you'll get the at the end, at the end of the design. Okay, just before the JDS file output, the layout will look like this. Okay, and then at the end, we generate a GDS format of the file, and that is sent to the foundry for fabrication. Okay, so let us start from here today. Structured design principles. Okay, so although we have this hierarchy that is a divide and conquer approach. Okay, but okay, this it is here, but in addition to this, we have uh, three more concepts which are particularly useful also in VLSI design, and those are regularity, modularity, and locality. Okay, so they the circuits, they tell the important concept. Okay, that would be used, that should be used, and that would be very helpful in designing those systems. So in general, regularity means about the hierarchical decomposition of the large system that should result not only in simple, okay, but also in similar blocks as possible. Okay. So when you decompose a big system into smaller modules, into smaller subsystems, we should take care that it should result in not only simpler, smaller systems, but also uh, similar, smaller systems as much as possible. So it is a good idea to use many number of smaller blocks which are similar in functioning. Okay, rather than to use different blocks, different smaller blocks which are not similar or which are different in functions. And why it is so? Because when there is similar blocks which is to be used many a times, then that makes the whole uh, that makes the whole design process fast, as we will use the similar block. So then uh, it at a and create a copy of it as much as you want. Okay, it will also and it will save design time also for the design engineer. Okay. So, for example, at the transistor level, okay, uniformly sized transistors simplify the design, and at the logic level, identical gate structures can be used. Okay. So the thing is to use smaller blocks and also the similar blocks as much as possible. Okay. So although okay, although it may not be possible practically at all the time, okay, but the thing is that we should go for it. We should try for it. Okay. What happened? Mhm. So it tells about the possibility that what should be done. Okay, and for example, look at here. Uh, 2 is to 1 multiplexer circuit. Look at this circuit first. Okay, here. Okay. Now, uh, you might have seen earlier also the circuit of a simple 2 is to 1 multiplexer. Okay. Now here, uh, and we know that 2 is to 1 multiplexer circuit can be designed with the help of AND gate, OR gate, and inverters, right? Uh, we can use AND gate. It will consist of AND gate, OR gate, and inverter gate. Okay. So a total of three types of gate would be used basically to design a simple two-to-one multiplexer. Okay. Now, how is this circuit different? This is also a 2:1 multiplexer. This is but the difference is that uh, for designing this 2:1 multiplexer, okay, how many types of gates are used? Only two types of gates are used. Okay, look at this. This is an inverter. Okay, and this is a buffer circuit. Okay, a tri-state buffer. The tri-state buffer. So one inverter and the other type is tri-state buffer. Okay, so instead of three types of gates, that is AND, OR, and inverter, this circuit is only using two types of gates, that is tri-state buffer and inverter. Okay, so basically, by following this principle of regularity, which is saying that we should use smaller modules, smaller blocks to design a big block, that is fine. But also at the same time, we should also focus on using similar number of smaller blocks, similar kind of smaller blocks as much as possible. Okay, so that is why you look here. Okay, this circuit is one multiplex is only two kind of smaller blocks. Okay, basic multiplexer circuit that will use AND gate, okay, OR gate, and inverter. So total of three kind of gates would be required to design a 2:1 multiplexer generally. Okay, but instead we can also use this circuit. Okay. Now the advantages would be obvious because since it consists of only two types of different gates. Okay, so overall design time would be saved. Okay, although look at here, because this is a small circuit. Okay, you may not be able to appreciate the advantage that it is offering here at this level. But think of it, when designing a big circuit that consists of thousands of such multiplexers, or even lakhs of multiplexers. So there at that level, okay, even a small saving at the fundamental bottom line would save a lot of time, as a whole for the complete design. Okay, so as the design scale up, as the design become more and more complex, these small advantages also scale up. Okay, and they also become more and more evident, right? Now here, this is a D flip flop. Okay, D flip flop. Okay. Now in your digital electronic subject, you if you remember the circuit of those flip flops, those SR flip flop, JK, master slave, and D flip flops, you might recall that those consisted of uh, inverters, and gates, okay, and OR gates. Okay, those things were required. Okay, although you could also design the circuits by using NAND gate and inverters. Okay, now this is a different approach. Okay, this circuit uses just inverters and the same this is tri-state buffer. Okay, so the whole circuit is designed by using again only two types of gates. One is inverter and the other one is the tri-state buffer. Okay, inverter, this is tri-state buffer, inverter, and tri-state buffer. Okay, now although we can you can also argue that, okay, so we can also design, we had seen the circuits which had used only um, AND gates, sorry, NAND gates and inverters. So there also we had seen only two types of components being used. Okay, right. That is also correct. But here also it is all here in this case also it's using just two types of different components. Okay, so in that sense it may be equal. Okay, now when we go to the internal circuitry of these individual gates, okay, you may find that the internal circuit of a tri-state buffer may be a bit different, or maybe a bit simpler than the internal circuit of a NAND gate, which was used in those diagrams. Okay, so maybe it may be providing us advantage in that sense. Okay, in that sense, and also because look at here, maybe if we are using an inverter here and this is a tri-state buffer, okay, their functionality and design are, I will not say are exactly identical to each other. Okay, but they are kind of similar to each other also. Okay, if you are aware of inverter, you are aware of this. Okay, only one input and one output is required. Okay, and this is a tri-state buffer. Okay, uh, where it is also using the third state of high impedance. Okay, but the internal circuit, when you will see, may be slightly different from the inverter. Okay, but maybe slightly simpler as compared to internal circuit of NAND gate. Okay, So maybe in that sense, it's providing that kind of advantage. And also because if in a big circuit, if you are using multiplexers and D flip-flop, okay, a lot. So since you are using inverter and tri-state buffer gates for designing multiplexers, so why not to use the same inverters and tri-state buffer for designing D flip-flops also in that big circuit? Okay, so because you have already done the work of designing tri-state using tri-state buffers for multiplexers. Similarly, so let's we can use the same inverters and tri-state buffer for designing the flip-flops also, if these two smaller blocks are appearing in a big block. Okay, so it's a better idea to go with only these kind of smaller blocks. Okay, if these two structures are appearing in a big circuit. Okay, so this regularity usually reduces the number of different modules, that need to be designed and verified, okay, at all levels of abstraction. So it will we had already seen that it gives us this advantage of in terms of reduction of number of different modules, and it will ultimately save us the design time that is required for the complete circuit designing. Okay, so it will definitely help us, in that perspective. Next concept is called as modularity. Okay, so what it says that the various functional blocks, okay, which make up the larger system must have well-defined functions and interfaces. Okay, so the smaller blocks which are being used to design the big block, the big circuit, those smaller blocks must be similar to each other as much as possible, that we had seen in the previous principle. Now this principle says that, okay, uh, they should also have well-defined functions and interfaces. Okay, so suppose if this is the big circuit, okay, and let's say it comprises of different blocks. So there may be adders somewhere, there may be multipliers, there may be flip-flops, okay, there may be multiplexers like that. Okay, then there may be sometime individual gates somewhere, okay, like that, like this. So what it says is that all of these individual smaller blocks should have their individual well-defined functions. Okay, that what is their input number, what is their input ports and output port, okay, and how the input port and output port of these individual blocks are related to each other. Okay, what is the function, what is the relation between output of this and input of these smaller blocks, and this is applicable for all. Okay, so they should be properly defined. The function of these smaller blocks should be properly defined. Okay, and why is it so? Because at the end, at the bottom, okay, when it is done like this, okay, although it has to be done like this, okay, uh, but many times it may not be possible, but most of the time we can do it. Okay, and because the concept of modularity enables the parallelization of the design process. Okay, so what do I mean here, what do we mean by parallelization of the design process? It means that okay, so if we have, let's say, 1 2 3 4 5 6 6 different blocks, okay, that comprises of consist and that makes this whole complete big block. Okay, big design. So if we have 6 different blocks, okay, then we can design all these 6 different blocks simultaneously. Okay, okay, each of the team, one team may block on this smaller block, other team may work on the design of this smaller block, another team may work on the design of this smaller block, another team may work on this, and so on. So it help us in designing these smaller blocks simultaneously to each other. Okay, and when the work is done simultaneously, that is in parallel to each other, it helps us in designing a lot of time ultimately. Okay, now you can imagine if you have thousands of these kind of blocks, and if you design each of these block one by one, then how much time it will take. And if you can use this concept, and if you are designing, let's say, 10 blocks at a time by different teams or different individuals, then how much time it will take. Okay, roughly we can say that it will just take 1/10 of the time when it is being designed one by one. Okay, and this is a huge saving of time in VLSI industry. Okay, because this VLSI industry is very if you will see the targets of the company, you will see that this is very critical in terms of time that it takes to produce a product. Okay, so in that sense, this becomes a very critical, very good, very important concept that is to be applied. Okay, that must be applied. And the last principle that is there is called as locality. Okay, locality. Yeah, I think Sahil Kumar has raised hand. What happened, Sahil? Sahil? Sahil, are you here? Sahil Kumar? Yeah, Sahil, are you here? Sahil, I think okay, let me check. Siddhant Patnaik, are you here? Are you listening? Siddhant? Mm, okay. Someshri Karan? Someshri? Someshri Karan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then Shubham Kumar Das?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where is Sahil? Sahil? Sahil is not responding. Suraj? Suraj Kumar Mahapatra?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyhow, so I will continue. So this principle of locality states that the internal details remain at the local level. Okay. So it ultimately tells us that when we do the connection between different modules, okay, uh, we should try to place the components near to each other, in the sense that we should avoid the long distance connections. Okay, look at, for example, if we have a chip like this and it is full of different blocks. Okay, different smaller blocks. then all of these would be definitely the output of this would be going to, let's say, the input to this, and the output of this may be going to input of this, and output of this may be going to input of this and this. Okay, and like this also. Okay, and then we can also have a scenario like this, where again we are having the same blocks, and it may be designed by a different designer. Okay, where the blocks which are related to each other are placed for, let's say, for example, the output of this block is going to the input of this, the output of this is going to the input of this, and the output of this is going to, like this, the input of this. Okay, so which is clearly visible here in this second case, that the connections or the wiring connection that are done between different blocks, they are longer as compared to the connections which is done in this case. Okay, so this is the funda here, that we should avoid these long distance connections, long distance wire connections between different modules. Okay, why it is so? Because now when the technology is becoming smaller and smaller, when the technology is going to, now we are having the chips which are like 5 nanometer based technology. So when the components are becoming smaller, when the transistors are becoming smaller, okay, then in those scenarios, the delay of the components or the delay of the devices or the delay of those transistors are becoming comparable with the delay of the interconnections. Okay, and many times the delay of these interconnections dominate the over the delay of these devices or the transistors. So in those cases, the delay of the wires becomes extremely important to take care of. Okay. And when you have long distance interconnections between different modules, it will introduce those delays by these wire connections, which would be more than the delay of the transistors or the devices. Okay, so to avoid those things which ultimately will affect the performance of the chip. Okay, now because you always remember the performance of chip, I had said there are three important parameters: delay, area, and power. Okay, delay is delay will tell you about the speed at which the IC is working. Area, the amount of area that it is consuming. Power, the amount of power dissipation that it is doing. It is dissipating. Also, when the interconnections would be large, okay, then in that case, the power dissipation and area consumed would also be more. Okay, so overall, the performance of the chip degrades when it uses these long interconnections. Okay, so that's why it becomes very important to avoid these long distance interconnections or long distance wiring between different smaller modules. Okay, so this is of great impact. This concept has a great impact on the overall performance of the chip. Okay, so this is extremely important for avoiding long interconnect delays. Okay, so what happens? We can, although again I am saying that it will not be always possible to follow this locality law. Okay, but we should try for it. Okay, as much as possible. Um, it is not saying that you should do it all the time. Okay, it will be just impossible to do it all the time. It may be possible sometimes, it may not be possible sometimes, because obviously if you place some blocks near to each other, some other blocks automatically go further, and if there is a connection between those, that further block and one block sitting here, it may happen. But we should look for it, that which blocks are interacting more. Okay, we should place those blocks to nearer to each other, and the blocks which are interacting less, we can place that block further. Okay, and also the time critical operations should be performed locally. Okay, the modules which are related in such a fashion that are some time critical operations, they can be placed nearer to each other. Okay, so time critical operations should be performed locally without the need to access distant modules or signals. If necessary, the replication of some logic may solve this problem in large system architectures. This is also a thing, practice that is used, that sometimes it to achieve certain target, uh, we add some extra logic in the circuit. Okay, and many times we replicate some logic again to get some desired uh, function to be achieved in a big architecture. So these are some things which will become again clear as we move further. But as for now, locality principle says that the connections should be mostly between neighboring modules as much as possible. Okay. Okay. Now, after that, since we had seen this regularity, modularity, and locality, and obviously we had seen the hierarchical, that is divide and conquer approach. Okay. The next topic is about different VLSI design styles. Okay. So we had seen simplified VLSI design flow. We had seen these basic principles of design. Now, this is very important, the different VLSI design styles. Okay. So to design a circuit, to design a chip, okay, to design a specification set, what are the different types of approaches that are available in VLSI field? Okay, so there are there are few uh, different kind of VLSI design styles that are available. So we have full custom, we have semi-custom, and then we have some programmable design style. So in semi-custom, we have standard cell based approach, and we have masked gate array approach. Under programmable method, we have PLD, we have CPLD, and we have FPGA based style. Okay, so we will look these kinds of design styles one by one, and we will see what advantages or disadvantages they are having, because no single design style will offer you all the advantage. Okay, if one design style gives you very high performance chips, then it may cost a lot. Okay, if some design style like FPGA gives you uh, uh, a design to be completed in a very short span of time, okay, but then the performance may not be that much high. Okay, so there is a trade-off. You will find that there is a trade-off between uh, the performance that you get from the design flow, from a particular design flow, and in terms of cost and time that it takes to design that whole process. Okay. Okay, so let's start with the first type of design style, which is the full custom design style. Okay, this is the oldest and most traditional technique. And the important thing here is that everything is built from scratch. Okay. Everything is built newly. So if there is a task to design a particular chip, then in that case, the entire mask design is done anew without use of any library. Okay, even the library has to be built in this case. Okay, so you will you will construct, you will design the components of the library, and then after designing the library, you will use those components to design the whole system. So everything is built from zero. Okay, there is nothing assumed to be available. So that's why you will find that this kind of approach will take a very long and tedious task. It costs a lot. Okay, so full custom design is a methodology for designing integrated circuits by specifying the layout of each individual transistor. Look, specifying the layout of each individual transistor. So it is working right from there. Each individual transistor has to be designed, okay, according to the specification, according to the need, and then it should be used in the bigger design. Okay, and the interconnections between them. Someone has unmuted his or her mic. Ankit. Okay, so in this case in this full custom design style, it takes since everything is built from zero level, so the development cost of such a design style is very high. It takes a huge amount of money, okay, for developing system under this design style. Okay, because everything is built from scratch, right? But what is the advantage? What is the benefit? The benefit is that since everything is built from scratch, okay, so it gives you the highest possible performance of the chip. The chip that comes out from this process would be performing at its highest level among all the different VLSI design styles, VLSI design approaches that are there. Okay, so full custom design potentially maximizes the performance of the chip. It maximizes the performance of the chip and minimizes its area, but is extremely labor intensive to implement. It takes a very hard labor, very hard amount of work to design the whole system. Okay, so where it should be used? Definitely, it should be used to those ICs that are to be fabricated in extremely high volumes. Okay, okay. For example, some microprocessors and some specific ASICs, which we know that they would be sold uh, in numbers of millions or even billions. Okay, so the number of products that would be sold is very high. Okay, for those kind of ICs, this approach is generally used, because if you will use this for designing that kind of IC which whose production will not be of that high number of uh, high number of scale, very high scale, then it will be a huge loss. Definitely, there is everything there. This is also you'll find that, okay, this is the technical thing, that at the same time this is also a business. Okay, there are people working around, there are people working in the different companies, so this is also a business. It should give some profit to the organization, to the company at the end. Okay, okay. So this approach is basically used for those kind of ICs which are required to be fabricated in millions and millions of number or even billions of number. Okay. So in a real full custom layout in which the geometry, orientation and placement of every transistor is done individually by the designer, design productivity is usually very low. Okay, definitely when everything is built from the very scratch, then the overall productivity of the design is going to be low. Okay, typically a few tens of number of transistors per day per designer. So one designer in one day may produce just a few number of transistors in one day. Okay, and since the productivity is low, okay, so it will also take a long time to design the whole system. Typically, a few tens of transistors per day per designer. Okay, so the productivity is low also in this case. But what is the advantage? The biggest advantage is that you will get a chip performance which is of highest standard, which is maximum among all these design styles. And this is the advantage, right? Okay. Now, the second type of VLSI design style, VLSI design approach is standard cell based design. So what we had in the previous case is that even it used to build the library also in the case of full custom design style. But here, what is the difference is that let's say if the library is available to us, okay, then what work has to be done is just to pick up the components from the library, okay, and combine those components, connect those components properly to design your functionality, to design your circuit. Okay, so it assumes that the library is available, and this is called a standard cell library, because the components that are present in the library are called as standard cells. So the name comes out to be a standard cell library. So the library would be made available to you, to the designer, under this standard cell based design approach. Okay, and what does this library contain? The library contain a typical library may contain a few hundred cells that will include inverters, NAND gates, NOR gates, some complex AOI, that is AND or invert, OAI, that is OR and invert gates, then flip-flops, multiplexers, adders, uh, and these kind of circuits. Okay, so which will form the basic building block of the bigger circuit. So the library would be containing these kind of smaller cells, smaller gates. Okay, some combinational gates and flip-flops, and then some arithmetic circuits would be there. And the designer will pick up those components from the library and would design his circuit, would design his uh, the whole design. Okay, so and again, for example, inverters, okay, or buffers or tri-state buffers. The library contain these type of gates, yeah, that's fine. But again, the different flavors of these gates are also available in the library. When I'm saying different flavors of these gates means different varieties of these gates are there. Okay, for example, look at here, wide range of power options is 1x, 2x, 4x, 8x, 16x, 32x, 64x times the minimum size inverter. Okay, there would be one inverter which is of minimum size. Okay, and that would be the smallest component in the whole library. Okay, For example, there is a minimum size inverter. Okay. Now we will also have, in addition to that minimum size inverter, 2x, 4x, 8x inverters. So 2x inverter means what? It means that 2x inverter would be 2 times the minimum size inverters. Okay, in terms of performance, the 4x inverter would be 4 times the performance of a minimum size inverter. 32x inverter would be 32 times the performance of a minimum size inverters. So we have a basic minimum size inverter, and in addition to that, we are also having some bigger inverters which are giving higher performance, 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, 16 times, 32 times, and 64 times, like that. So we have different kinds of performing gates, similar invert. We have different kinds of performing inverters. We have the minimum size inverter, we have the 2 times performance inverter, we have an inverter which will give you 4 times of performance, we have inverters which will give us 64 times of performance. Okay, and this is applicable for all kinds of components which are available in the standard cell library. Okay, so we have NAND gates, AND gates, having different kinds of inputs. We will have 2 input NAND gate, we will have 3 input NAND gate, up to 8 inputs NAND gate, right? Sometimes we require 2 input NAND gate, sometimes we require in a circuit 3 input NAND gate, sometimes we require higher input NAND gates. So for those different kinds of applications, those different flavors of the basic cell is given. Okay, we have high, normal, and low power, again varieties of these NAND gates. Similarly, NOR gates, 2 to 8 number of input gates, and these are there. These different flavors are available for different kinds of gates. Okay, so basically, our typical library will be having a few hundred number of cells, and there will be option to choose any of these cells. So you have a wide variety of different kinds of cells in a library, and you pick up the desired component and you place it, and you again pick up some another component, you place it on the area, you connect those things, connect those different cells to complete your design. Okay, so since this approach gives you already ready-made cells in the form of library, okay, so obviously it will take uh, less amount of time as compared to full custom design style. Okay, so it will be a bit faster in terms of productivity, in terms of design time that it will take to design a complete system. Okay, so cell-based design can deliver smaller, faster, and lower power chips than FPGAs. What is FPGA? We'll see. FPGA is basically standing for Field Programmable Gate Array. Okay, but has high NRE cost to produce the custom mask set. Okay, because look at here, the last aim is to produce a mask set, because the mask is used for actual production of the IC. Okay, so this is the last aim to produce a mask which can be used for fabricating the chip, right? As compared to FPGAs, these cell-based design will deliver smaller, faster, and lower power chips. Okay, but when you compare it to the previous approach, that is the full custom design, okay, definitely what would be the advantage? The benefit is that it will take less time as compared to the previous approach. Okay, and what about the performance? Can you guess? Although the
Better, sir.
Better. Uh, Look, the library is made available to you, and the components are made available to you, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
yeah, there is a foundation that you have to use those components. Even you may be happy, you may not be happy with those components. Okay, so
Yes, sir.
whatever performance those components are having, you have to use those things. You cannot increase the performance of those individual cells, right? But in the case of a full custom design approach, you have, since you are building the library also, so you have the opportunity to design to maximize the performance of the cells also. But here, whatever performance is being given by the library cells, you'll have to live with that. So in that sense, you'll find that the performance of the design from the standard cell based design approach, the performance would be a little bit lower than as compared to the previous design style.
Sir, but in
Okay.
full custom design style, the chances of error would also be higher now, since everything is built by scratch from the designer.
The
Whereas
chances of
in
error would, yeah, definitely the chances of error would be high, but why would you make an erroneous chip? The error would be there, right? But the thing is that at every stage the design is verified. You design a certain thing, you verify that thing whether that thing is working or not. You again design, go to the next stage, you do some modification, you again verify this. Okay, so you make sure that you do not produce a malfunctioning chip, right? If there is any kind of malfunction, you rectify this. Okay.
yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is also economical for high volumes of production, this standard cell based design. Okay.
Sir, NRE, what is NRE? NRE costs.
NRA is called as non-recurring engineering cost. Okay, non-recurring engineering cost. When you compare it to FPGA, the standard cell-based approach is having a high NRE. This is the cost that is involved in the design initially when you set up the things. Initially, you have to invest some amount of money. Okay, and that money is spent on the setting up the whole system, and that cost is not recoverable. Okay. Okay, so there are some costs which may not be recovered anyhow. Okay, so what those kind of costs are collectively called as NRE, that is non-recurring engineering cost. Okay, and in the case of standard cell based design, it is higher as compared to FPGAs. Okay, but NRE cost for standard cell based design would be definitely lower as compared to full custom design. Okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I have given one example. Look at here. This is the layout of an inverter. Okay, I am writing here, so you should not get confused. What is layout? I have used this term many times. Layout of inverter. So layout means the actual geometrical shape of the component. Okay, so we know the symbol of an inverter. Inverter looks like this symbol wise. It has one input and one output. Okay, and output is invert of input. Right, this is fine. When you look at the circuit of inverter, you will see that we will see this thing also. There is one PMOS, there is one NMOS. Okay, and this is ground, this is output, this is VDD. One in PMOS and one NMOS. This is the circuit of an inverter. Okay, this is symbol. This is circuit of inverter that consists of two components, one NMOS and one PMOS. Okay. Now, when you again go to the next low level, when you again go to the next lower layer of abstraction, you will find the actual layout of the inverter, the actual layers which are present in the inverter and which are actually making this inverter to function is this one. So this is the uh, diagram of how an inverter will actually look like when you go to the bottommost part, when you go to the bottommost layer. Okay. So we should have one PMOS on the top. Okay. So this is the PMOS area, P transistor. We should have one NMOS, look at here. And this is the N transistor, NMOS. So this is NMOS and this is PMOS. We will see the thing later on also, but this is I have included here just for giving more insight. Okay, look at here, and we should have one VDD. Okay, and this is VDD. We should have the ground here, and this is the ground. Okay, now they should be connected by metal layers and polysilicon layer. Okay, and the output and the input is given to the common gate of PMOS and NMOS. Okay, so this is the input which is given to the common gate. So this black line, okay, this black this slanted lines layer is actually the gate of this PMOS and gate of NMOS, which is connected and made common, and it is used for feeding the input signal. The output is taken from the common point between PMOS and NMOS. This is the output which is taken. This blue color line is the actually the metal layer which is connecting the drain of this PMOS to the drain of this NMOS, and output is taken from here. Okay. This is the power rail, VDD rail, this area, and this area is the ground rail. Okay. Again, this is blue in color, so it represents the metal deposition. And this is also blue, so this is also the metal deposition, metal layer, which is used for providing power connection, VDD, power supply to the circuit. Okay. So this is the actual layout of a single 1-bit inverter, single inverter circuit. Okay, and because you have the library will contain inverters also. So how does an inverter look like? Basically, it looks like this. Okay, and you will also find that once you understand this, you would be able to understand the layout of the other gates like AND gates, NOR gates, XOR gates, then some a bit complex circuit like multiplexers, adders, those things. So for understanding the layout of those, the basic understanding of an inverter is a must. Okay. So if this is the layout of an inverter, okay, it must be having some dimensions in terms of width and height. Okay, so how much length it is consuming? It is the summation of all these components, VDD bus width plus transistor P transistor width plus the spacing between these two things plus ground rail width plus N transistor width plus the spacing between these two things plus the spacing between P transistor and N transistor. So when you add these components, you get the complete height of this inverter layout. Okay, just for an example, it is not here required at this amount of time to remember or understand this thing completely. Okay, just try to look at how the things are actually there here. Okay. Okay, so uh, after chip logic design is done, using standard cells, picking up the standard cells from the library, then the most challenging task is to place the individual cells into rows and interconnect them in a way that meets stringent design goals in circuit speed, chip area, and power consumption. Okay, so we pick up the individual cells from the library and then we place them in rows and then we connect them with the help of wires or interconnects. So this is one of the most challenging tasks, that where to place which gate, where to place which cell. Okay, the cells are picked up and placed horizontally. So this is the space where those cells would be placed. Some inverter may be sitting here, some adder, some multiplexer may be sitting here horizontally. Okay, similarly this layer will also contain those cells, this one and this one, and the spacing that is there in between these different in between these horizontal layers, this spacing is used for routing channel, is known as routing channel, that it is used for connecting these different cells. Maybe this cell want to communicate with this cell sitting here, so some kind of connection may be desired here. This may be wanting to communicate with this. Okay, the output of this may be going to the input of this. So these how are these connections made? Okay, this space will contain, this empty space will contain the actual interconnections which are actually being done between these different standard cells which are placed horizontally. Okay, and then on the periphery of this block, on this chip, you'll find these small squares placed. So this actually will contain the different input and output pins of the whole circuit. So they will contain the pins, input and output pins. Okay, all around the periphery of the chip. Okay. So this is a simple crude block diagram, a simplified floor plan of standard cell based design. Okay, so these are the area where the standard cells are placed. This empty area is used for interconnections. Okay, and these periphery blocks are used for connecting input and outputs of the chip. Okay. Look at here. Again, this is just for understanding purpose, not required to memorize this. No. Look at here. This is a mask layout. I have always talked about mask. Okay. How does a mask layout look like? It will look like this, which is actually very confusing. Okay. Of a standard cell based chip with a single block of cells and 3 memory banks. Look at here. You have, this is one big black area, second big black area, and the third big black area. So this is actually memory consuming area. Memory is placed here, one block of memory, second block of memory, and third block of memory. Okay, and then this is the big area. Okay, which is containing block of cells. Okay, block of the components which are picked up from the library. And generally these memory banks are pre-designed, and they are also called as macro cells. Okay, so you do not design the memory, it will be available prior to the design. Okay, because memory contains a very regular structure of components, so it's basically pre-designed and fixed. Okay, you pick up memory block and place somewhere here. Okay, and you then pick up the components and keep it here, place it here, route it. Okay, and then on the periphery you will find these smaller square area, which is actually used for different pins that are coming in and going out of this chip. Okay, so in a whole, the mask layout will look like this, where with experience and with time you will be able to recognize these different blocks. Okay, what this block may be, what this block, they are actually present on the periphery, so there must be some kind of input and output pins. And this dense black color block maybe a memory bank. Okay, and this, which is not so dense but which is sometimes some kind of horizontal lines looking like, this may be the area where the actual cells are placed from the library. Okay, just for reference. Okay, you will find this in the book. I think this I have picked up from Kang. Okay, so you can go to that page and read something about it. Uh, what is the time? 9:50 to 10:40 now. Okay, students, so I will stop here, right? And we will resume from here. In the next class, we will start from gate array design approach. Okay. So till now, any doubts from today's class? You can ask. If there is any doubt, you can ask. Okay. And you can give your attendance in the chat box. Just write your roll number and name and give it in the chat box. I will note it down as your attendance. Okay. And any doubts are welcome. Please give your attendance in the chat box. Write your roll number and name.
So can you send the PPT and syllabus in WhatsApp group?
Yeah, definitely. I will send it. Just give me some time. Okay, by Monday or Tuesday, I will send it. So all of you, please also install this Canvas app. Okay, I will create a course on Canvas, and all the things I will share in that app also. Canvas is a learning management system. It's a LMS software that is actually built for education purpose only. Okay, so I will use that LMS Canvas. Since I'm also taking this VLSI from Triple E section. Okay, so I have also informed them. They will also be installing this thing. Okay. Any other doubts? Students, please ask your doubts. Okay, because this is online mode class, so